The first time Ada Rivera noticed Daniel Hale, he was staring at the corkboard outside her classroom like it contained a map out of his life. The board was messy with tide-stained flyers, poetry club, SAT prep, weekend beach cleanup. But Daniel stood motionless in the flow of parents shuffling between conferences, reading each flyer like he owed them all a careful accounting. Late spring sun cut through the hall windows, landing on the crown of his sandy hair and the rough line of his jaw. He looked like driftwood, weathered, useful, stubborn, Mr. Hale? Ada asked, stepping out of room 214 with a stack of student portfolios hugged to her chest. He turned as if surfacing from underwater. He was taller than she'd expected. His eyes held a surprised softness that didn't quite match the construction boots and the calluses along his fingers. "That's me," he said. "Sorry, I was just reading. I can see that." She forced a light smile and a lighter tone, because she'd learned, over 6 years teaching sophomore literature at Whitman High, that adults could be more easily spooked than their children. "I'm Ms. Rivera. I have Jonas next period," he breathed out. The name seemed to carry both gratitude and apology. "Right. I figured I should meet you. I know he hasn't exactly been—" He searched for a word, and Ada watched his mouth settle on honesty. "Showing up lately. We'll talk," she said, holding the door for him. He stepped into her classroom carefully, as if worried his boots would scuff the quiet. It was a room Ada had made her own. Lamps with cotton shades. Book spines like small cities. A thrift store rug that muffled the echo of tile. The whiteboard still held the day's essential question in blue marker. What do we owe the people we love? Underneath, there were lines from Neruda and a handful of student answers she hadn't had the heart to erase yet. Daniel looked at the quote and smiled, crooked and unguarded. "I don't know that one," he said. "It's Neruda. Love poems." She saw him glance at the paper roll of absences at her desk, and also the hardest unit to teach to 15-year-olds. He laughed, something brief and shy that pressed at Ada's own defenses. "He'd hate that," Daniel admitted. "Poems. Most of them do," Ada said. "Until they don't." She gestured to the chair across from hers, and they sat, a desk between them like a politely arranged chaperone. She opened Jonas's portfolio. "I won't pretend his attendance hasn't been a problem," she said. "But there's something there. He writes like someone who's looking for a door." Daniel's hands folded together, the knuckles pale. "He's been different since his mom passed. Junior year was okay. This year's been a cliff." "I'm sorry," Ada said and meant it. Daniel nodded, eyes fixed on the desk. "I keep thinking if I could just fix something, like if grief was a cabinet that needed a hinge, then we'd be okay. But I can't fix this." He cleared his throat. "I can make him get to school, I will. I just don't always know how to make him want to be here." Ada's mouth was already ahead of her caution. "There's a Thursday poetry club." "Not just poems," she lied gently. "We try everything. There's pizza. You don't have to like it to try it. Sometimes kids want a room where no one grades them for breathing." "Is that allowed?" His smile flashed and vanished, like a gull over water. Barely, she said, and they both laughed. The sound landed softly in the warm air of the classroom. Ada saw the relief ripple through him, the way the muscles at his jaw loosened. "Thank you," he said, "for trying." "It's my job to try," she replied. And then, because honesty had already entered the room, she added, "It matters that you're here." He nodded once, lingered by the corkboard again on his way out, and then he was gone. The door whispered shut. The hallway filled again with voices, the flavor of 100 small dramas. Ada stood at the window, watching the parking lot glitter with windshields. For a long moment she let herself rest her palm against the cool glass, the way you touch a fevered forehead. She had no business thinking of the way his mouth went uncertain before he smiled. Ada had come to Whitman High the way people drift into coves after a long crossing. After her mother died 2 years earlier, an illness compacted into a winter she could never quite forgive. She'd sold the apartment in the city, quit adjuncting at the community college, and rented a small white house 3 blocks from the ocean. She walked to work. She learned her students by the sound of their lockers. She bought too many books at the library sale and arranged them on shelves named for places she missed and places she'd never go. She'd told herself the ocean would teach her how to be alone without making it an event. When Jonas showed up at Poetry Club the next week, he did it the way teenage boys do everything that scares them, loudly and pretending not to care. "Relax," Ada told him, sliding a greasy plate of pizza his way. "We're discussing the greatest love story of all time, whether pineapple belongs on pizza." "It doesn't," he said too quickly. "Then write a sonnet about that tragedy," she said. 14 lines. Convince us. The word sonnet blanked his face for a second, then he smirked. "You'll never win." "Good," Ada said. "Winning ruins art." He stayed. He listened to Casey read about her mother's 3rd shift at the diner, and Eli write a rap that was mostly about the science teacher's cat. Ada watched a small, nearly invisible hinge turn in Jonas's posture, shoulders dropping, hands unclenching. He didn't write that day, but he showed up the next Thursday and the one after, and one evening he left a folded paper on her desk with a poem too honest to grade. Daniel started showing up, too, in ways he probably didn't mean to. He emailed to ask if Ada could suggest a book for Jonas. He likes movies. Does that help? And then sent a second email, a minute later. Sorry, that sounded like I think movies aren't books. I like movies. I just don't know where to start. She recommended The Graveyard Book. He bought it that afternoon. On a Tuesday, when the fluorescent light in her classroom flickered like a trapped insect, Daniel stood in her doorway holding a toolbox. "The custodian said you needed a ballast replaced," he said. "I do some maintenance for the district. Contract work." "You do everything," Ada said, and his smile answered not even close, while he stood on the ladder, shoulders against the ceiling. They talked about little things that hid bigger things. Weather, which is grief in public. Tide charts, which are schedules for longing. The best coffee in town, which is another word for sanctuary. When he stepped down, he scuffed one heel on the rug. "Nice classroom," he said. "I keep it that way on purpose," she answered, and then wished she hadn't. He did not ask what the purpose was. He didn't need to. They both knew. It was a room where people were allowed to become anyone they needed to be for 45 minutes at a time. "Thanks for the book," he said at the door. He read it. Said it was fine, which in Jonas means it got past the firewall. Ada laughed. "Tell him there's more where that came from," she said. "Tell him yourself," he replied. "He's just stubborn, not deaf." That night, Ada took a long walk down to the pier and watched the lobster boats knot at their moorings. She did what she sometimes did when the day had felt too full of unsentences. She wrote a letter she would not mail. "Dear Daniel," she wrote in the small notebook she didn't let her students see. "You and I keep talking around the thing we're not allowed to name. I went to get coffee this morning and came back with cinnamon you said you liked. I teach the difference between metaphor and simile to children who know that adults use both to tell lies. If love is like something, is it still itself? If what I feel is the weather passing over my life, can I go inside and wait it out?" She closed the notebook. A gull landed on the pier rail and eyed her like a critic. "Keep it to yourself," she told the bird, and went home. Small towns have their own circulatory systems, the gossip that keeps the body of the place alive. By May, it had reached the staff lounge that Ms. Rivera's poetry club was a weekly meeting of misfits and the occasional untethered adult. The librarian said it with a kindness that troubled Ada more than an insult would have. The principal said it with an edge of warning. "Boundaries," Mrs. Brodie reminded Ada kindly, the way someone reminds you to hold the railing. "The PTA is a microscope. You're doing good work. Don't give them a reason." Ada nodded. She knew. She had a list of professional ethics in her head that she locked like a door every night. She did not reply to Daniel's emails after 9 p.m. She did not discuss her personal life with Jonas. She did not allow her heart to tell her it was the hero of a movie, when it was only a teacher in a small town trying to be good. Daniel seemed to understand the rules she hadn't spoken. When something needed fixing, the wobbly shelf by the window, the stain on the ceiling that the summer storms had deepened, he showed up with the quiet competence of someone who had taught himself to survive. He always knocked. He kept his hands busy when he talked to her, in case the air wanted to get ideas. One wet Saturday in June, the school hosted a used book fair. Parents and students came in damp and hopeful and left with paperbacks pressed to their chests like rescue animals. Ada was sorting a box of battered poetry books when she felt someone step into the space beside her. "Daniel." "I came for the first editions," he said gravely, and then grinned when she made the face you make when somebody tries out a joke they're not sure they own. "Just kidding. I came to return this." He held up the graveyard book. The corners were softened, the spine softened further. "I didn't write in it," he added quickly. "I know it's not a library, but I wanted to keep it clean." "You can keep it," Ada said. "I have 3 more. He shook his head. "I'll buy my own. Feels different to do that." He was wearing a dark jacket that still held the rain. dots scattered across the shoulders. Ada had the sudden, unreasonable desire to brush the water off with her sleeve. She held the poetry book like a talisman. "You read it?" she asked. "Me? Yeah, He looked suddenly embarrassed. "I liked it. I read it after he fell asleep. Didn't expect to want to see what happened next. It felt like when I was a kid and my dad would take me fishing before dawn, and I'd be awake in a way I didn't know was possible." "You read like a builder," Ada said before she could stop herself. "You watch where the seams are." He blinked, and then his smile was no longer shy. It was recognition. "You'd be good at cabinets," he said softly. A volunteer called Ada's name from across the gym. She stepped away, and it felt like breaking a wire. Afterward, when they were stacking chairs and the rain had graduated to a steady sermon, Daniel hovered near the door. "Do you—" he started, then paused. "Do you need a ride?" "I walked," she said. "I like the rain." "Me too," he said. "Except when it leaks through my roof." "The roof at home?" she asked, and he nodded. "Let me pay you back for the ballast," she blurted, because it was somehow easier to talk about money than the thing between them that accumulated interest like a debt. He shook his head. "You already have. How?" "By not giving up on my kid," he said simply. Ada's eyes stung. "That's my job," she whispered. "Some people do it like a job," Daniel replied. "You do it like a vow." She touched the door frame so she would not have to touch him. "I should go," she said. He stepped back, opening the door for her. "Me too." They walked out into the rain separately and pretended not to notice that they turned onto the same street. The rumor started the way rumors do. With a truth too small to carry, all the weight hung on it. Someone saw Daniel's truck outside the school on a Sunday when he replaced a cracked pane in Ada's window. Someone else saw Ada and Daniel speaking too long at the farmer's market, their hands full of apples and things they couldn't say. A student saw Ada drop her keys and Daniel pick them up, and the student swore he saw their fingers meet. By the last week of school, the PTA president, a woman whose smile was an expensive blade, requested a meeting with the principal. The principal requested a meeting with Ada. The kind librarian looked away when Ada entered the office, as if she could spare Ada embarrassment by refusing to witness it. Mrs. Brodie kept her voice soft. "You haven't done anything wrong," she said, and Ada heard the claws it had to drag behind it. Yet. "But perception matters here. Can you avoid contact with Mr. Hale outside school events?" "I don't have contact with him outside school," Ada said, flushing at the lie because the market counted, didn't it? The street counted. The rain counted. Mrs. Brodie nodded, compassion fatigued. "The PTA is the wind," she said. "Sometimes you just lean into it and wait." Ada went back to her classroom and closed the door. She sat on the rug and put her forehead on her knees and let her breath go in and out until it found a rhythm she recognized. She would make it through the last week. She would plan for summer. She would not write a letter she would later burn. That afternoon, Jonas did not show up for poetry club. He did not show up for last period English. When the final bell rang, His chair was an absence that whistled. Ada called the attendance office. No answer. She called Daniel. He picked up on the first ring. "Ms. Rivera?" His voice was too calm. "Have you heard from Jonas?" She didn't add, "I'm sorry to call you." She had spent all her apologies already. A breath. "No, he left the house at noon. Said he was going to a friend's. The friend says they didn't see him." "Okay," Ada said, already moving. "Okay." They met in the parking lot without saying where they'd meet. Sometimes the map draws itself. Daniel's jaw was set. His eyes were the color of storm glass. "He likes the jetty," he said. "When he was little, we used to count waves." "I'll check the pier," Ada said. He mentioned the lighthouse in one of his poems. Daniel nodded and they split. The wind had teeth. The gulls tried on other birds' voices. Ada hurried past the bait shop, past the ice cream place with the shutters banged down by a stubborn spring. She ran the last block, her lungs burning with the kind of fear that rearranges your priorities. She found Jonas at the base of the lighthouse stairs, a dark figure hunched against the concrete, his hood up, arms wrapped around his knees in a posture she recognized from the classroom and from childhood, and from the painting she sometimes tried to become when the world was too loud. A person making a smaller person inside themselves to hide. "Hey," she said, forcing her voice into that classroom tone, the one that could bend without breaking. "I was hoping to find a lighthouse keeper." "Do you know one?" He snorted. "It's automated." "Most things are," she said, easing down to sit a few feet away. "But right now I could use a person." "I heard," Jonas muttered, not looking at her. "People at school, about you and my dad." Ada set her hands flat on the cold concrete. She did not touch him. "People love a story," she said. "The truth is less entertaining." "What is the truth?" She inhaled. "The truth is your dad and I are friends. The truth is I care about him. I care about you. The truth is I am your teacher, and I won't do anything to make your life harder than it already is." He was quiet long enough that the lighthouse creaked, and the noise became part of their conversation. "He's different when you talk to him," Jonas said finally. "Like he remembers he used to be funny." Ada smiled despite the ache behind her eyes. "He is funny," she said. "Don't tell him I said so." Jonas's voice shrank. "Everybody thinks I'm broken," he said. "Everybody is broken," Ada replied. "Some people are better at hiding it." He nodded as if cataloging a fact that might be on a test. "I miss her," he said, and the words punched their way from his chest. "I know," Ada said. "Missing is a language no one teaches you, and suddenly you're fluent." They sat. It began to rain, lightly, a rehearsal for something heavier. Jonas pushed his hood back and let the drops tap his hair. Footsteps thudded on the stairs above. And then Daniel came into view, breathless, his face a lesson in every version of love. "Hey, bud," he said, relief making him sound like the man he must have been before grief took rent. He crouched beside Jonas, trembling so hard Ada pretended not to see. "You okay?" "No," Jonas said, honest to the bone. Then he swiped his sleeve across his face and added, "Yeah." The way boys do when they need the world to stop hovering. Daniel looked up at Ada. Their eyes met in a narrow corridor of rain. For a moment, they stood inside a truth as clean as salt water. They were two people who loved the same person for different reasons, and there was no map for that kind of country except kindness. "Let's go home," Daniel said to his son. "We'll get pizza. You can hate the pineapple." "I don't hate it," Jonas said, getting to his feet. "I just think it's wrong," Daniel laughed, ragged with grace. He turned to Ada. "Thank you," he said. And she shook her head, because he was a man who tried to fix everything with his hands, and sometimes the thank you had to be the fixing. "Good night," she said, because anything else would count as an act. They left together, a father and a son, and Ada watched them until they were swallowed by the wet gray. She stayed a few more minutes to make sure the ocean kept doing its job. She didn't see them for 3 days. The PTA meeting came and went. Mrs. Brody defended the poetry club with a spine Ada would later buy flowers for. The rumor thinned like fog. On Friday morning, Ada found a small cardboard box on her desk. Inside, wrapped in brown paper, rested a hand-carved bookend, smooth and warm, with the shape of a lighthouse cut into it. There was a note in Daniel's careful block letters. "For your heroes, so they don't fall over," it said. "Thank you for helping us stand." Ada touched the carved edge with a finger that wanted to be bolder. She placed the bookend against a row of battered anthologies. The shelf looked suddenly anchored. She did not reply to the note. She didn't need to. The school year ended, as school years do, not with a noble chord, but with a cluster of frayed ones. Lost textbooks and yearbooks signed with promises no one intended to keep. Ada packed her room alone, humming a half-song her mother used to sing while cleaning. She took the Neruda quote down last, folded it carefully as if creases could wound it. "That summer," she wrote, "long mornings that smelled of coffee, afternoons of walks and groceries and the gentle math of solitude." She thought about Daniel more than she wanted, less than she feared. They saw each other sometimes at the market and always gave each other too much space. The air between them was thick with the things they would not say, and yet it wasn't empty. There was something like respect growing there, a wild plant that did better without being touched. In August, she got a letter from the district. Would she consider applying to be the new coordinator for the after-school programs? The job would move her off the classroom floor and into a role where she could build spaces like the one she'd made in room 214. Rooms that felt like exhale. It would also clean up the lines of professional distance. She said yes. She said yes because she wanted to build a bigger roof for the kids who came in from the weather, and because she knew sometimes you move the furniture of your life to make room for what deserves to enter. She told nobody. Not yet. In September, when the air woke up and the town put on its sweater, Jonas walked into her office on a Tuesday afternoon. He was taller after summer in that baffling way teenagers are. He held a spiral notebook like it might break. "They said you're in charge of all the clubs now," he said. "So I wanted to join one." Which? Ada asked, trying not to beam. Poetry, he said, rolling his eyes at himself. I wrote something. He placed the notebook on her desk and slid it forward with 2 fingers. She read the first line and swallowed a noise. He had written about the lighthouse. When he left, Daniel lingered in the doorway. He looked apart from the construction boots and the calluses for once. He looked like a man trying a room on to see if it fit. I heard about the new job, he said, hands in his pockets. I didn't say anything because I didn't know if I should know. It's public now, she said. So you can know. He nodded. The silence was easy and wasn't, both at once. I brought you something, he said, touching the strap of a canvas bag on his shoulder. He pulled out a stack of slim, awkwardly beautiful shelves, hand-cut, sanded within an inch of being silk. For the club, if you want. She reached for the top shelf and then stopped, a small distance before contact. They're beautiful, she said. And then she met his eyes. We're okay, she added. She didn't know if she meant the 2 of them, or the room, or the kid who had written the lighthouse into a prayer. Maybe all of it. We are, he said. They stood there. 2 people learning the shape of a feeling that refuses to be hurried. Ada thought of the letter she hadn't written all summer and decided she didn't need to. Some things you don't say in words because the room itself is speaking. Coffee? He asked finally, the word careful. Sometime. Public. Daylight. When it's not complicated. After parent night, she said. After the first progress reports. After it all stops being a story for other people and starts being one we can write. He smiled. Okay. He lifted the shelves, set them carefully on the table by the window. Okay, he said again, with more breath in it. He left. She watched him go without the old ache, just a new, steadying warmth. She ran a hand along the shelf edge and felt the work in it, the hours. She thought of her mother, how she'd once said, while folding the same towel 3 times, "Love isn't fireworks, mija. It's a lighthouse. You don't stare at it all night. You just know it's there when you need it." They had coffee too, months later, on a bright, brittle afternoon when the ocean looked like sheet metal. They sat on the bench outside O'Malley's with paper cups and watched a dog commit to the idea of chasing nothing in particular. "How's work?" he asked. "Good," she said. "Turns out I like building things I can't touch." "Me too," he said, "except mine always end up with fingerprints anyway." They laughed. They ate a shared muffin like a couple pretending not to be a couple, which is to say with clean napkins and awkward bites. They talked about Jonas, who had turned in a poem to the school's lit magazine that made the faculty advisor cry, a good cry. They talked about the leaky roof finally replaced. They didn't talk about the spring. They didn't have to. The story had changed genres. When they got up to leave, he hesitated, the old reflex motion of restraint. Then he reached for her hand. And this time there wasn't a rule in the way, or a rumor, or a term contract hung above them like a chaperone. His palm was warm and human and exactly as ordinary and extraordinary as such things are. "Okay," he said, not asking, just confirming what the day already knew. "Okay," she said back, and squeezed once. The way you steady a ladder for someone you trust. In February, during a storm that erased the horizon, the poetry club met in the new room the district had cleared out for them. The shelves Daniel had built held books that smelled like attic secrets. Neruda's line was back on the wall. "What do we owe the people we love?" Beneath it, in her students' hands, the answers were messy and insufficient and in progress, which is another way of saying perfect. Jonas read a poem about a boy inside a lighthouse. Casey read one about the diner's flicker lights. Eli read a rap about the cat that had evolved into something like a lullaby. When it was over, they ate too many cookies. On their way out, Jonas turned and said to Ada, "Thanks." He meant the room. He meant the day. He meant his life. A little. "Bring a friend next time," she said. "I will," he answered, and then, after a beat he had earned, he added, "I'm proud of you." He looked embarrassed immediately. "For, everything." "Me too," she said, and they grinned at each other.